Hey folks, Don Martelli reporting live here from the bunker. Had the pleasure of being introduced to and meeting Jennifer Reingold, who is a former reporter, comes from the newsroom, came from the bunker herself, covered incredible things, interviewed all types of people, really found herself in a niche. And the conversation today is really about her journey from the newsroom to somebody who's working in strategic communications and public relations. And oftentimes when you speak to journalists that have gone to the dark side, as we like to say, there's just something between those two individuals that just really clicks. And with Jennifer, it really was like day one that we had a conversation. I knew that I had to have that on the podcast and hear about her work and the things she thinks about when it comes to this business and the work that she's doing for her clients. Folks that have worked in the newsroom, that have been in the journalism bunker, have a great way and a mindset to transition to the PR bunker, which is why I had to have her on. So enjoy the episode, and I will see you on the other side. Hey folks, welcome to the PR bunker. Super stoked about my conversation today. I was telling to many folks that asked me about PR, my work in journalism. I said, if you're a PR person, but you're a reporter first, it just gives you a different lens for the job. You know, sometimes when you have friends that you haven't seen in 2 or 3 years, but you kind of fall into just a rhythm. When you meet somebody who's in PR and they've been a former journalist, there's something about it that just clicks. And with that said, I'd love to invite my new friend, Jennifer Reingold, who comes from the grind, comes from the bunker, and spent time pen and paper as a journalist, now in strategic communications. And we met through a mutual friend in the Slack community. But Jennifer, thank you for being here. And thank you for your time being a journalist, because it's not easy, as we all know. But welcome to the PR bunker.
I'm super stoked to be here too, Don. And it's always good to be with a former journalist. You just get it.
There you go. Well, I always start these conversations with tell us your story. And as journalists, it's always kind of messy, but there's a reason why we ended up in journalism in some way, shape, or form. And I loved when you told me your story. So tell my audience, how'd you get between the pen and paper? How'd you get started?
So I always had I was always into news. I was always into political news, international stuff, even as a kid. And I grew up in Rochester, New York, where there's not a lot of news. But I moved to San Francisco, and my high school, the school I went to had this very incredible high school paper, and I thought, oh, I'll do that. So, but you had to take a journalism class to actually get chosen to be on the paper. And I was not chosen to be on the paper. And I was like, what? I'm like a great writer. What do you mean? So that pissed me off. And then I went to college, kind of was focusing on international relations, which is what I studied, and also wrote sports for the Daily Pennsylvanian, because I'm a huge sports fan. Don't talk to me about the Patriots, because I'm a Bills fan. And we'll get to that. And so I, was kind of doing it a bit on the side, but then, decided I wanted to be a war correspondent, and that would be a cool way to combine everything I was into. So I went to grad school for international relations as well, and did a lot of writing there, but soon discovered that I did not actually have the guts when it came down to it to just show up with no job and no support in a war place, which is really how you get going in that space.
Oh, yeah.
When you're young, they don't just hand you a bureau chief job. And I also needed work. So I decided not to do that. I left Washington, where I was living at the time, went to New York, needed a job. And because I had studied economics too, they thought I knew something about business, which I didn't. Because actually I went to the University of Pennsylvania and didn't take one class at Wharton on purpose, because I was so principled at the time.
Love it.
But I needed a job. I got a job at a magazine called Financial World. I was like, what am I doing? And over time, I started to really love it. And what I loved about it actually was I discovered much more, the numbers are the numbers. They don't lie. Well, until lately, but they aren't supposed to lie. It's hard to manipulate facts and data, right?
Agreed.
I liked that. But then what I loved about it was people. And so I got really into writing about leaders, and I was always fascinated by what makes a good leader, what makes a bad leader, what makes a bad leader good, what makes a good leader turn bad, which actually you see a lot. And I actually had kind of a subspecialty in this, because there is no shortage of bad leaders.
Unfortunately, you're right.
So I kind of went into that direction, and then I kind of found that I loved what I did, and I went on to work at Business Week and Fast Company, wrote a couple books, did freelance for a little bit, went back to Fast Company, then spent my last 10 years of my career at Fortune, which I absolutely loved, doing investigative stuff, feature writing, and helping with some of the conference work. And then I left there in 2018 for the next chapter.
Love that. I know when I think about my journalism days, there are some just stories that stick with you. I did some random story about a cobbler that was basically retiring at the young age of 95. You know, immigrant from Italy, and it ended up on the front page of the Metro, and it's something I just always remember sitting in his living room. What are some of the stories for you? Because clearly you have business and you've covered a lot of people and stories and data, all that. What's some of the stuff that you just think of and it has stuck with you like a pin over the years?
Well, you made me think of one that I don't normally think about when you said cobbler, because I thought about this short piece I did on kind of the barber to all the rich people in New York.
Oh.
And he was an immigrant, and I haven't thought of this in ages. He had a little stall, I think it was in the St. Regis, and everyone went to him. Rupert Murdoch, Donald Trump, whatever, and it was like a word of mouth thing. And in fact, they had actually crowdfunded getting his kid to college. But he gave me, this was before Trump even ran to be president, but he gave me a very specific. He actually wasn't Trump's barber. I take that back. But he looked at his hair, and he gave me an analysis of how he actually made it all happen.
Oh, wow.
And I said it all out in the thing because it was hilarious. And, that was like, that piece went crazy. You know, it was just one of those things where it was a little bit of a one-off. Someone told me about the barber, and
love that.
It was just a sort of a look into rich people's lives, and it was also a look into an immigrant's life, and then it was also this: how does Trump actually do his hair? And it was hilarious. It involved like having it all on one side and a comb over this way, and then a swirl to the back.
The details and the descriptions. Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of journalism, right? We talk about the macro, but we do it through the micro. Right. We talk because what you described is, a little bit of, pre-politics, business, immigration, word of mouth. I mean, there's all those little elements, and just we're sort of chefs with the words.
Right? Yep. That kind of, it's always the story of real people that makes people understand a concept. At least that's been kind of my experience. And it is also my experience, in my job at Jennifer Reingold's Advisors, where I'm really helping people tie their story to their strategy. It's like, you got to have a real person and a real thing that people can relate to. You can't be in the abstract.
How did you find the when we leave the pen and we go to the other side of the fence, right, the dark side, as we always say as a journalist, right? What was that transition like for you? Did you find it natural? I mean, what is it kind of weird? Like all of a sudden you're on the other side of the fence. Just talk to me through that transition professionally.
I'm not going to say it was easy. It wasn't. I am kind of a very direct, say it like it is person. I didn't go directly into PR. I still do content as well. So I took a job as global head of content at Egon Zehnder, and then another one at World 50. And probably the hardest thing for me, and it still is hard, is when you're a journalist, you get to just get right to it. It's not like about all of the business language and all the sort of, very polite ways to say things. There's a business language of communications.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, I tell people about all the time, but for me to do it was hard. And I think people who worked with me would laugh if they watch this, because they know that I often say exactly what I feel. And people are like, oh, we don't do that in this business. And I'm like, right, we don't do that in this business. So that's the hardest part. Also, I just miss, I did a lot of investigative work. What is happening to a lot of journalism pains me, and I feel guilty.
Same.
That I'm not in there. And I loved the work that we did at Fortune in that period of time. I'm very, very proud of we had a great group. Super proud of the team and the stuff we worked on. And I did a lot of pieces that I feel really proud of.
Yeah. Love that. But I'm sure it's teed you up, like in my business. Now, I did, covered cops, robbers, politicians, business, all that stuff. And then I transitioned. I did the corporate PR thing, did crisis communications for big brands, knowing that they did stupid shit, but I was still kind of spinning the spin, if you will. But in recent years, my client base is sort of mission-driven, impact-focused. So there's an intent to the types of clients I want to work with because of the shit I went through in the Andy Dufresne stink pipe from Shawshank Redemption. Like, we've gone through it, right? So I'm sure that the work that you're doing has some intent and you're strategically focused on particular types of work because you had that experience, because you realize that, yeah, there's companies out there that need your language, that need your brain, that need your, black and white advice to communicate to their audiences. So talk to me about like the business where it is now, the kind of client work you're doing now, anything you're proud of, anything you're working on you want to share.
Sure. So, first, Don, just to sort of support what you're saying, like, I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't think I'm helping in some way. Like, that's a huge part, I think, of having been a journalist before. Like, I really want people to be better leaders, and that is what motivates me in my work. And I really think, and I'm not bullshitting, I used to think I'll say this. Before, when I was a journalist, I thought when PR people said some of this stuff, I thought it was bullshit.
Yeah, full of shit. We got to BS and BS. That's what everybody thinks. But
yeah, but you don't have to be that way, right?
Correct.
You can be authentic. You can be authentic in telling your story, and you can be authentic in helping someone tell their story. And that's kind of what I think my probably secret sauce is. Yes, I know what journalists want and are attracted to, I think, in a way that people who aren't journalists don't. But more than that, I think if we can make people be better leaders and we can not waste people's time with like bad content and bad PR, like there is so much overwhelm out there for anybody. And if you're in business, there's 10,000 newsletters and promotional tools and podcasts and blah, 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 right? What I tell my clients is if what I'm doing or what we're going to do isn't going to be ultimately good for the business in some way, then we shouldn't do it. Like, you don't just do it to do it.
Love that.
And a lot of people are like, give me a PDF. I need a piece of paper. I need this so that I can hand this to my client. And I say, no, you don't. You don't need that unless it's going to help the business, right? So I would say that one of the things I say is that bad content is worse than no content, which
Agreed.
is a little bit opposed to my making money sometimes, right? But honestly, I don't want to add to the, cesspool. I only want my clients to tell a better story, and a real story, by the way.
Yeah.
I also, I'll talk about a couple of my clients. I'm working with a company called Koios right now, which is a startup that is building peer networking organization for chief information officers.
Nice.
And so the whole idea is you're a CIO for a mid-cap company, and we're starting in the Midwest, and you don't have anyone to talk to. AI has come along. It's hitting everyone over the head. Not everyone, even CIOs are struggling, and they don't know how to sort of translate their technology expertise to being a business leader and to helping the business, even though business is being driven by tech now, right? And these guys are like, okay, you CIOs over here, you do your job and tell us what to do. And it's not like that, right? It's not about saving money. It's about growing the business. So these CIOs really need help. And they don't have help because they work so hard and they're by themselves and they're, so this organization, Koios, is about building communities for them. So I'm helping run their content and develop that stuff. And, again, when we have these events, people are like, oh, my God, just to be in the room with other people is so great.
Love that.
Yeah. And then, I have a couple financial clients. One is called CalcBench, and they provide really specific drill down, amazing financial data, earnings stuff, almost to the minute after it's released. Wow. And anyone can use it. Wow. So it's really about democratizing information, and that's kind of the story there. That's helpful. We did a piece that actually got picked up in Barron's about, this is so not wonky, but non-GAAP earning. How companies are using a different form of earnings and releasing this more and more to kind of show a better picture. And now it's become so accepted that gets put on CNBC instead of the actual number.
Got it.
But, regular investors don't know this.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. So we're doing a service here. That feels journalistic to me, and the Barron's reporter, Andy Serwer, picked it up and wrote a great piece on that.
I love that. I mean, we are, I do feel that folks that have worked in a newsroom and talked to people, interviewed, developed stories, understood what real deadlines are. Hey, look, I've had times where I was holding up the paper because I was, 3 lines of copy short of just getting the thing done. But the pressure, the time, the storytelling does, I think, make you a better PR person, because I think, to your point, there's a lens to which you're like, okay, I can't say this because I can spin, but like if it's like I'm telling you that this black crayon is green, but everybody knows it's black, it's my personal reputation that's on the line. And I think that, we are PR people and we're consultants, but we're really like business advisors, to be honest with you, because as you describe what you're doing, you're taking a financial reporting model and saying, well, there's some value and a shift in how people digest information to democratize it, which is not just about presenting data in a typical, financial reporting way, but you're giving it that spin with a pretty big dose of reality and truth. It's not just like, hey, I'm making this black crayon green, but that us carrying that flag is something that just makes us as former journalists, I think, unique PR people, because we just have that lens. And it's good to hear other people that have found their niche and finding clients that, need somebody like us to clear the clutter and say, this is your path forward, black and white. So it's good stuff. And what's the future of your work look like? Where else are you hoping to scale the work and things like that?
So I've been at this, on my own for a little over a year. And it's funny, you kind of have to reevaluate. Like, I put up this big website, I do all these things, blah, blah, blah. What do I actually do now? It's been a year. Not exactly what I thought. I think my real niche is really focused around, it remains focused around leadership, right? There's a lot of different things I can do. I've been putting on events as well. Did an event on moral leadership last year for the Howe Institute. I'm working with a company called IRG that does events for chief marketing officers. But it's how do you tell, it's bringing people together, telling their story, using leadership and their product kind of together, right? And I think by sort of putting the story in the world of the leader, let me say this again. I think that that telling the story from the perspective of the leader humanizes a company a lot, right? It has to be done correctly. Like, you can't just put somebody up there who's like, not connected to humans.
A corporate shill. Yeah.
That's not going to work. And again, like what you said about the green and the black, if it's not true, you shouldn't actually do it. And that's a big difference.
That's a novelty concept, huh?
And even with corporate communications, people we're crisis stuff. Something bad happens. People are like, make it go away. At least my advice is you can't make it go away.
Yep. No.
And trying to make it go away
makes it
will
worse.
Exacerbate the problem. So what can you acknowledge? What can you do better? Where can you be genuinely authentic and accountable, right? Honestly, I think as we're having this conversation, I'm realizing in many ways, I'm still kind of acting like a journalist in a lot of
Very
my
much so. Absolutely we are.
And I don't see it I don't see it anymore as like crossing this big line. The other interesting thing I think is that being on the outside it's so fun. And it's so fun to dig into a deep story. I did a giant story on Pfizer. I was like running around, like literally in dark rooms, meeting with people secretly. There's nothing like that.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Just in terms of the rush, and also feeling that you're exposing something that needs to be out there. But I think from the inside too, you can really help to influence, not behavior. You can really help to influence the way people think about problems. And I do think, again, PR and communications and content are often seen as this like thing way off to the side here, maybe under the CMO. I think CEOs that can have someone they can go to that will sort of give them truthful feedback, it's worth a lot of money. We see this everywhere. I don't have to say in politics too, but when people are isolated from truth tellers, they fail.
There's a big difference between.
You don't have to do it in front of everybody, right? But they need to have someone, an advisor. So in terms of where I want to go with my business, if I could do more of that work, working with CEOs to just sort of help them understand how their company is perceived and coming across, but also have them able to bounce something up on someone who will be honest with them and not intimidated because, I don't work for them.
Yep. That's the strategic, there's public relations and then there's strategic communication. It's just, we're advisors, right? And every business communicates to an audience or audiences all the time. distantly 24/7, 365, and we're sort of the gatekeeper of all that. So you're absolutely right. So this is, before we wrap up, I've got one last question for you, which is, I've been waiting to ask you this question. If somebody's looking to go, you get some young, Don Martelli, young you thinking like, I'm going to go to journalism school. I'm going to be a journalist. I'm going to go into the grind. What advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about going into the journalism space in today's media environment in 2025?
Oh, I'm glad you asked this question because I've changed my mind.
Really? All right. Rip
So
it. Let it rip.
when I left, I was like, look, the future for, and again, I was at a more advanced stage, or called it older stage.
Experienced, we should say. Yes.
But, I just, so many layoffs, so much shrinking, so much, that I did not suggest that anybody should go into journalism. Now I have a different perspective. I think that, first of all, I think the answer is yes. I think the world desperately needs truth tellers, desperately. I think that the news deserts that have been created, especially in local places, there is so much opportunity for somebody who's young. You're not going to make a lot of money, but you were never going to make a lot of money.
Valid.
You're not going to have a lot of job stability, but nobody has job stability, right? Like, rather than doing the safe thing, I would say, like, go learn how to talk to people. Go take a chance. Go make a difference in someone's life, right? Learning how to tell these individual stories leads you, and it can lead you other places if you want to eventually theoretically make more money like we do.
Yeah.
I think you're still learning something that is a skill that will serve you whatever you do. You go to law school, you'll know how to, interact with people, talk to people, whatever. You go to business school. The world needs journalists, number one. And I think people need to learn that kind of critical thinking. I think they need to learn how to make a tough call. They need to learn how to stand up to somebody. These are all life skills. And also, it's really fun.
Agreed. You're preaching to the choir. Time management, interviewing people, asking smart questions, listening, note-taking, juggling, networking. It all came from the days in the newsroom, right? Because walking up to a politician who you've never met who's wearing a suit and tie, has got 9,000 people around him trying to block you from getting to them, but you still have the cojones to get up there and say, hey, Governor, what do you think about, your promise of no taxes? And you're just all of a sudden raising taxes by, 2%. It just takes a little bit of guts and a little bit of time and being a little callous over the years. But you're absolutely right. It's a that experience is a life skill.
It's a service that we all, the world needs, right? Everybody
Agreed.
needs accountability
Agreed.
to be better at their job, wherever you are, business,
Love it.
Whatever.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, I got a feeling you and I will be sticking around and having conversations like this on a regular basis. So if people want to learn more about your work, read some of your stuff, follow you, go to your events, inquire about maybe hiring you for some work down the line, where can they find you?
So my website is www.reingoldadvisors.com. It's REINGOLD. That's probably the best way to find me. Of course, you can AI or Google me.
I love that. Just Google me, bitch. I'm here. I love that.
I have to say go Bills, though, before I get off this.
Yeah, well, I think our Patriots, my beloved Patriots, are going to probably snag about 10 or 11 wins this year. And
you do, huh?
I do. Well, Miami's in the crapper. The Jets are the Jets. And, Buffalo likes getting to the dance, but they can't be the king. They just can't get over the hump. And it goes back to Jim Kelly and Scott Norwood and all the Shanks. We're unveiling a Tom Brady statue in front of the stadium today because of the rings.
Okay.
Okay, you can have the top of the AFC East, but we have rings.
We'll get there. Don't you worry.
Look, anybody but KC, I was rooting for the Buffalo Bills.
I know. I found myself
all the time.
A Eagles fan last year, which was weird.
Yeah, and look, Josh Allen's a hell of a player, right? Good team. I love the way they play, scrappy, hard nosed, hard hitting, that whole thing. It really vibes well. But I think the Patriots probably won't win the division, but we're gonna be in the mix in some way, shape, or form. It depends on how the Steelers do and the rest of the AFC, but we'll see.
We call this PR where I come from.
Hey, well, we learned from the Bible of Bill Belichick. Okay, so we're on to Cincinnati.
Yeah, let's not talk about Bill Belichick. He's a little crazy.
Yeah, he doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit. He's just doing whatever he wants to do. But, hey, shout out Bill if you're watching. Appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate the rings. Well, Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Go Patriots. Go Bills maybe. Only when you're playing anybody else but the Patriots. But we'll do this again. Keep us posted on your trajectory on this side of the fence as a strategic advisor. Good luck with the agency and the work there. If there's anything else we can do here at the Bunker, just let us know. But it's been a pleasure to speak to you today.
Thank you so much, John. Thanks for having me on. This is really fun.
Thanks for joining me here in the PR Bunker. As always, you can get other episodes, content around public relations and communications and related topics at theprbunker.com. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, find it on YouTube, and just about everywhere else online. So appreciate you being here today. Want a nice little shout out to Jennifer for joining me today. Thought her story was great. Looking forward to having her back on the PR Bunker. So again, please share this, comment on it. If you are a journalist or ex-journalist or somebody who's in the communication space and wants to be on the podcast, reach out to me, hit me up at prbunker.com, and I'll see you later.